Never miss an episode of the Final Furlong podcast. Subscribe now on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And now, here's your host, Emmet Kennedy.
Welcome to our review of wacky races mixed with some elite thoroughbred action. Champions Day had everything, and we're going to break it all down for you in the company of Adam Mills from Total Performance Data, former jockey Georgia Cox, and actual still jockey Charlie Bennett, who makes his debut on the Final Furlong podcast. Looking forward to getting the opinions of everybody in the Final Furlong podcast, brought to you by 1xBet, sponsoring 3 races at the Curragh on Tuesday afternoon, including the Final Furlong podcast with 1xBet handicap. Best of luck to everybody competing in the 3 1xBet races. We'll begin with the star of the show, the undeniable star of the show, the apple of Adam Mills' eye. His picture is over his shoulder. Calandagan confirms his elite turn of foot and his superiority over the field, and probably the best middle distance horse in Europe, at least the best 10 furlong horse in Europe, and maybe the world, and that will probably be the highest rated race in the world as well. Adam, explain to us just how good Calandagan was.
Just different gravy to this lot, isn't he, really? It's sort of, we've had like a real battle with getting Calandagan to the front on this podcast. The person who comes on here whose opinion I value most described him as Mr. Silver Medal in June. Oh dear. And then when he won at the Grand Prix de Saint-Cloud, everyone went, it's only a French Group 1. And then when he won the King George, everyone went, but the Aiden horses didn't set it up for him and didn't run their race. Well, now everything was against him. Graffard went, we don't need a pacemaker. You two can have your pacemakers. Do what you want. And he's so humble in the way he talks about his horse, but this thing is an absolute superstar. Longest stride in the field. Once Mickey Barcelona made the decision to get in front of Ombudsman, which was a stroke of genius, he knew if I get in front of Ombudsman, he won't come past me. He can't be beaten. Delacroix, slightly short of room maybe, but I'd argue I just don't think he had the pace to go through that gap. Calandagan's going too well. It's one of those races where, turning for home, I thought, we've already won. It's over. Normally, I'm quite nervous watching him because I come on here and I talk about how Graffard's better than O'Brien and everyone shoots me down. And I talk about these horses and then they let me down. But this was just phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. And Ombudsman has run his race. His stats are almost identical to the ones in the Prince of Wales' stakes. And Calandagan just pulled away from him. I'm not going to start the debate because you'll have all the Hong Kong fans going, QEII Rising, isn't he wonderful? I'm like, yeah. Isn't he wonderful? Winning sprints against Australian horses. Come over here and have a go. But for me, it's more, I just take the view. This is just the best.
Whoa. Hold on a second.
Don't worry.
I think we can be pretty certain that QEII Rising has nothing to fear from the British sprinters and the Irish sprinters. And for that matter, neither the Australians, Sephora, who they consider not to be in the top 10 of the Australian sprinters, crushes our lot. So he's very good. And he was great. We'll talk about him towards the end. But in terms of middle distance horses, the Aussies have to come to us to get their middle distance stock. We're the ones who produce that stuff.
This is the best middle distance horse in the world on turf, without a doubt. And he's proved that. That's a 130 plus performance. He's a gelding. He's getting better. We should really give huge amounts of praise to Mickey Barcelona. If you look at the way this man has ridden this year since he got the Aga Khan job, and there were early stage in the season, people were criticising him on Zaragana. Calandagan got beat by Jan Bruegel at Epsom, which was purely down to the track, but Barcelona had his knockers, and he's just worked out with this horse. You know what? You're in charge. We'll just get settled. We'll make sure we get a clear run. None of this business that Stefan Pasquier tried last year going up the inside. It was just, no, I'm going to make sure I get a run, because if I get a clear run, I'm going to win. And that's what happened. And, the great thing is he's a gelding. He's getting even better. He'll be back next year. You'd be brave to bet against him next year over middle distances, because this horse just keeps improving.
And that is one of the great things about him, Georgia. He is a gelding, as Adam says. And we've already seen from Trawlerman winning the long distance cup in the first running of that as a Group 1. We'll talk about that. Rebels Romance is a 7-year-old still strutting his stuff around the world. If they can keep him sound, touch wood, he's very much a horse to look forward to. But this was a blockbuster performance, and he gets first run on Ombudsman, but that doesn't really matter. If Ombudsman had gotten first run on him, I'm pretty sure he still would have picked him up. It's that elite turn of foot, which we saw against City of Troy last year. He was the only one to lay down any kind of a challenge to him in the Juddmonte International. We've seen it in this race a year ago, which, to be fair, was run on the hurdles track. And so actually he's unbeaten at Ascot as long as he doesn't have to run on a jumps course. And we've now seen it in 3 consecutive Group 1s. He's brilliant.
Yeah, he is exactly that. And I think, he's always been extremely talented, but he's just had to have those little quirks ironed out. And I think stepping him up and trip to a 1.5 helped him get his confidence. When he's been slow away a few times, he's still managed to then cruise through the race. And now stepping back and trip, that was the factor if he could do it again. But I think Graffard really enjoyed the all the talk with O'Brien and Gosden, and he could just step back and there's sort of not as much pressure on him. He knew that there'd be an honest pace. I mean, you could say Ombudsman was badly drawn and behind, but I think it's one of the fairest races that we've had in the Group 1 so far this year. I mean, it was a much better watch than the Juddmonte or, you know, the other races we've had like that. And like Adam said, you'd have to think he's going to be rated 130 plus after that. And no, I don't. I mean, everybody, it never knocked Batash's reputation with the people being a gelding, and it's not done anything to Blue Point's stallion career, the fact that he's been beaten by a gelding. And I don't think it's going to do anything to him here either. Fair play to Aidan O'Brien for bringing Delacroix over, because he could have easily swerved it. And Ombudsman would be a really interesting horse next year. I thought Alakan ran really well. Obviously, he was positioned in third the whole way around, and that did help him nab third. But I still think he's just not had the easiest training performance through. You know, Ed Walker did take him out quite early for the Arc. He was in the Arc and then took him out, and he'll definitely still be, he's still a horse that's going to do well next year. One thing when you watch this race, when you thought it's going to be lovely, good ground at Ascot and really fair, how much sand did they put down?
It was like a dirt track.
Yeah, it was literally wild. You're thinking some of these are going to be getting ready for the Breeders', getting used to the kickback for the Breeders' Cup or something. But it's just, again, shows you the legacy that the late Aga Khan's left behind. The same happened with Sheikh Hamdan when he passed away. Then Baid came along and he had that amazing time of it, and that always seems to happen. And another point is, I thought it was really good of them putting up the gallop videos. And there was a gallop video on the bridal work of Dariaz and Calandagan upsides, you know, just enjoying, not all out, but just enjoying on the bridal work. And I mean, what a gallop that's turned out to be.
Oh, Arc winner and Champion Stakes winner. By the sounds of what he was saying afterwards, Charlie, Francois Henry Gafford seemed to be suggesting that Calandagan had kind of laughed at Dariaz, or at least was saying to him, come on, this is how you actually do it. Two fantastic horses, brilliant season for Francois Gafford as well, to be fair. This is something that Adam Mills has been predicting all season long. But in terms of just dealing with Calandagan, first of all, and then take it away with the rest of them, how impressed were you with the French train gelding?
Well, I was very pleased that on Champions Day, with all the sort of mixed up results, that the main race delivered a proper race. And I think I've always liked this horse since he chased home City of Troy in the Juddmonte. And he just almost become a bit of a nearly horse as a 3-year-old. But this season he seems to have matured and found a new level, took his form to a new level, where he's just the best middle distance horse around. And it was great that this race there was no shenanigans like in the Juddmonte or the Eclipse, where they were a bit muddling races. And this race was truly run. Three proper horses positioned at the rear of the field, and everyone got a bit cut at it. And I think the best horse won.
Completely agreed. That's been the very frustrating thing, and Georgia kind of alluded to this as well. We've had a pacemaking mess in the Prince of Wales Stakes, where Continuous just went off way too fast. You've had a repeat of that in the King George. You've had a mess in the Eclipse, as Charlie has just pointed out, which Delacroix is the one who comes out on top of. The Juddmonte is just a write-off race. I mean, if you backed Ombudsman, well done to you. That's a stupid race. And Darius being beaten the way he was and then coming up winning an Arc kind of proves that. This was the test, and now we know. I concede to Peter Michael definitively, yeah, Ombudsman, the better horse. But John Gosden still lost, which was kind of, I think Andy Newton was somewhere in the background going, hey. But at least, as both Charlie and George have pointed out, Adam, at least we got a proper, truly run race.
Yeah, I think that was important. And I think Charlie's point is another good point, that thank goodness for Calandagan, because otherwise, if we'd have had a 28-1 winner of this race, we'd be looking at Champions Day saying, oh, it's gibberish. Get rid of it. Stick it on the all-weather. It would just be that kind of madness of what do we do? Because this racing was crying out for something to go big, and luckily Calandagan did. So, you know, and it's great because he is the chance now that we can start to build around him. He's not going to disappear off the stud. He'll be back next year. You'd assume he has a similar campaign. I mean, they might, imagine if they went to the Japan Cup. Suddenly you've got a European horse as like a 130 performer in a Japan Cup, or they could go to Cheltenham, or they could go to Australia or Dubai or France or England. It's fantastic. It's a really good, positive thing. I don't think there's anything else to say about it.
Time form gave him. Go on, Georgia.
I think as well, when you're running as a gelding, it's like you have to earn the respect, because people always say, oh, but it's a gelding. But then nobody said that when Frankel on his swan song beat Sirius Diegas and, another good French gelding, Solo, who came over and done it as well. So, nobody bags that form. And I think everybody finally respects him now.
Yeah, that's a really good point to make. Just out of interest, Charlie, where do you stand on the whole gelding in being allowed in the championship races debate? Because I was very much a traditionalist, and I've totally changed my mind on this. The geldings are allowed to compete in the Grade 1s in America, the Triple Crown races, the Breeders' Cup Classic. You've got a gelding winning the King George. You've got one winning the Champion Stakes. Why are they not allowed to run in the Derby? Why are they not allowed to run in the Arc?
Well, it's funny because my first thought when he crossed the line at Ascot was, where would he have finished in the Arc?
Yeah.
And especially with the 2-3-year-olds pulling so far clear, I wasn't sure where he would stack up with that. But then I heard Graffard's interview afterwards where he seemed to suggest that Calandagan can carry the Riz, to some extent. So could have been very exciting if he could have run in the Arc. I was a big fan before of Sirius Diegas as well, and I always wondered how he would have got on in that race. But I think that the gelding should be allowed to run in the championship races, and if the colts are good enough, they should just be able to beat them anyway.
Yeah, and also, if it's all about producing the next generation of stallions, well, maybe you shouldn't be a stallion if you're being beaten by geldings. And as Georgia pointed out,
surely you should be. Yeah.
It didn't matter to Blue Point. No one cared that he was beaten by Potash. It didn't matter to Empire Maker that he was beaten by Funnyside. Like, you can do it. It's not a problem. And I'm sorry, we have enough stallions. It's fantastic. There's so many stallions. Yeah, great, hilarious. Like, Delacroix gone now. We'll never know what he could have done as a 4-year-old. Unless Michael Tabor has a massive about turn and they go, no, we'll come back and show Ombudsman who's boss next year. And we have to relive this whole, oh no, another season of O'Brien versus Gosden 2.0. But how good would City of Troy have been this year if we'd seen him go? I understand why they retired him. It made sense. But we need more Rebels romances.
Another point with Coolmore, is this the first time since when have they gone into a breeding season with no six-figure proven stallion? Did they get Wooden Bassett just before Galileo died, and then before that, Sadler's Wells? Now... I guess they'll be shutting a lot to justify. But standing here, Delacroix got big shoes to fill.
This did happen before. Did it? And it was Danehill and Sadler's Wells. Sadler's Wells had been retired and Danehill had died. There was a huge conversation in the Bloodstock world about how it's over. It's Jover for Coolmore. They forget about it. And then Galileo emerged. And all the other Danehill Dancer and the top class American sires they had. So Giants Causeway. So they can recover very quickly, but is there another Giants Causeway Galileo sitting there? Maybe there is. Maybe Justify is going to continue that on. This is something John Magnus been talking about for quite a while. Adam, were you going to say something?
Only that I think we have to be very careful in how we build this, because there's a fine line. I would love to see Calandagan in the Arc. We'd all love to see Calandagan in the Arc. But what I don't want to see is 3-year-olds being balloted out because there's some 7-year-old gelding rated 115 that's getting in. So we've got to draw the line. And the line I would draw as an example is yesterday, Dubai Honor ran a massive race in Paris against Convergent and Yellow Jersey, set himself up to go to Cheltenham again in December. It was a really good race. Dubai Honor has a really good stellar career internationally. He's running all the great races around the world. That's what those races are for. And so the problem is we can't say, right, what we'll agree is if there's a gelding that we all want to see run, we'll let them in. Yeah. But, if you've got something rated 112 that's won a listed race, you can bugger off. Because how do you draw that line And where do you draw that line? If I'm William Haggis and I wanted to run Dubai Honour in the Arc, I'd say, well, he's run to a mark of 120 in the past. You've got to let him in. And so before you know it, the 3-year-olds and the colts that we need and the stallions that we need aren't necessarily going to get the chance. So you've got to kind of draw the line somewhere. For me, I think the Arc de Triomphe has to stay as it is because there's no solution that won't be to the detriment of the 3-year-olds. And for that reason, you just got to accept it. And for Calandagan, for example, he's going to win, I don't know, 3 more Group 1s next season. If we're lucky, maybe more. He can race everywhere apart from that one race. And, if I'm Mickey Barcelona, I'm also thinking, Deriz is coming back. Please don't make me have to choose between the two. That's a proper wife and her sister job, isn't it? How do you choose which one? You just can't. So you'd have to think, if you're Mickey Barcelona, Deriz is there. We're going to send him off. He's coming back for the Arc. How great is that? This is something that he's won the Arc, and it's like, no, we're going to race him at 4. In we come. We're going to race him at 4. We're going to have another go. When they could quite happily have sent him off to stud as an Arc winner, which has happened with Ace Impact and a few others in recent years. So that's great. We've got a 3-year-old colt who's going to be a 4-year-old colt coming back to win it. Calandagan will win everything else, and we can all be happy.
Yeah.
Another cracking one-liner there from Adam Mills on the Final Furlong podcast, brought to you by 1xBet. You can sign up now at 1xBet.ie. Bet 10, get €30 in free bets. Great time with the Breeders' Cup on the horizon. Bet 10, get €30 in free bets. Your game, your odds, your 1xBet. Gamble responsibly. Terms and conditions apply. 18 plus. BeGambleAware.org. 1xBet.ie. Check out now. All the anti-post odds are up for the Breeders' Cup as well, so you can check them out too. Just very briefly on some of the other horses, Georgia, you've mentioned Elaquam. Fox Legacy was really liked by Andy Newton. I thought he ran well. Economics, Charlie, economics. What do you do with economics now?
He's a puzzle. He's definitely a puzzle, but he's with the right man. If anyone will get him where he needs to be, I'm sure William Haggis will produce him at some point, even if he goes abroad. Definitely a head scratcher.
It is very useful for us that we've got somebody who's a close personal friend of William Haggis's, and I'm sure was having a really interesting conversation with him about his Oisin Murphy comments on Look on Sunday. What do you do?
I'm sure she'd know a lot more than me.
Yeah, I'm sure Georgia would have the inside track here. I think we know what William really wanted to do with economics, and the owner was against that. They're going to go to the Middle East with him, but can you ever trust this horse to actually come back to the form he was?
I mean, it is an extremely difficult situation to be in for, the best for the horse. And it sounded like he's going to sit down with the owner in the next few days and have a big discussion of his future. Because obviously it is just very, very difficult. He's very talented, but, it's not great. Obviously, it was an extremely hard race to go back into, but he was showing the right signs in his work at home. But, it is out there that he bled again. So it's a very difficult situation to be in.
And Almerac, I'm going to guess, just didn't like the ground, but is a nice prospect on soft ground next season. Delacroix, we think, is going to be retired on the back of that. Maybe not. Maybe they'll do a crazy Ivan, but it looks like he's gone. 125 plus with the time formatting for Delacroix. 124 standard for Almacan. 128 plus for Ombudsman, 133 for Calandagan. So the only way I see him being beaten next year is Ombudsman might do him in the Shima Classic, Adam, because that's a race John Gosden's got a good record in. William Buick rides that track brilliantly. He's a great jockey anyway. And maybe Calandagan wouldn't be quite ready for that. But then for the rest of the season, Prince of Wales Stakes back at his beloved Ascot, he'll wipe the floor with a lot of them. He'll definitely win that race for sure, Calandagan. And he'll be a very, very difficult horse to beat in all the top 10 furlong European races for the rest of the season. I can't wait.
Yeah, it's the fact he's now 1/10 in a Group 1, I think opens up a lot more doors for him. There's a lot more options. They went to Dubai last year, got done by Dan on Seal. That was a Mickey Barcelona special, but he's got over that now, and I don't think we'd have the same mistake. But, would they want to do that? Graffard's interview seemed to imply the original plan was the Japan Cup, but that they want to have a long think about it, see how he is. I'm not entirely sure the Japan Cup would suit him because of the way he's got to be ridden and the fact he needs a clear run. It's not guaranteed. But they could go to Dubai. But now he's 1/10. There's a really soft way to prep for the Royal Ascot, the Prix Gannet, which is the Gannet, the Ispahan, all of those races. as much as I love French racing, the early season Group 1s are winnable, to say the least. You could do the Prince of Wales. You might look at the King George again. If you're really ballsy, you might look and see what the 3-year-old generation does and have a look at the Jedmont International and think, can we go back and right the wrong thing as well? It's I'd imagine now they've gone from having 2 or 3 options over 12 furlongs to having 10 options over 10 or 12. And he'll probably mix the two up throughout the year.
And just in case Peter Michael didn't hear, Peter, you were right. I'm never wrong, but I was mistaken once, and I was mistaken about Delacroix. Ombudsman is better. I'm wrong constantly. Ombudsman's a better horse than Delacroix. Fair play, Peter Michael, you were right. Thank God Georgia and I were able to concede that. Well, we didn't really want to concede it going into it. I'm not putting you in the Delacroix camp here, but thankfully we were both with Calandagan, because if there was no Calandagan, I guarantee you I would have backed Delacroix, and that would have been even tougher. Peter Michael on the Telegram group and on X bragging about how he was right and blah, blah, blah. Oh, it would have been insufferable. Peter Michael back on the podcast on Thursday. Right about Ombudsman. Go on, Calandagan. Okay. Stayers, first running of the Long Distance Cup in Group 1 company, and it goes to John Gosden. The day started brilliantly for him at 1-2. Somehow, why did Trawlerman drift to 6-5 on? What was that about? Huge gamble on Sweet William as well, from 6-1 into 5-2. But obviously, the form was confirmed. Trawlerman is the superior horse. He'd had a hard season, you could argue, but he was the one they had to beat in this race, and he's come out on top, Adam.
Yeah, he's miles better than these, isn't he? I read a little piece on this, and when you think about all the superstar stayers we've had in the last 20 years, each of them seems to have had one season where they were just invincible. Yeah, we'll have Yeats and we'll have Kyprios and we'll have Stradivarius and various others. But when you think about the stayers, they're there for 2 or 3 years because of the nature of the racing. But they all have one season where just it's perfect. Nothing goes wrong. Everything goes right. Trawlerman's had that this year. He's miles better than these. And, it probably wasn't his best performance. He probably didn't need to be. I think William Buick maybe kicked for home a little bit soon, thinking that Trawlerman was in quite the same form. I don't think for one moment Sweet William would reverse the form. And the run-out speed, which is the data measured after they crossed the line, shows that Trawlerman pulled away from him again after the line, and his run-out speed was the best in the field. He's a really good stayer. He'll be back next year. Same campaign was John Gosden's interview, so that makes a lot of sense starting at Sandown. Is there a lot else to say about this race? Sweet William's a nice horse, and if he comes back next year, he'll probably win the Doncaster Cup, but he's repeatedly found out at this level, and I don't think anything's going to improve. You'd have to look and think maybe Scandinavia's going to come out of the pack and be a danger. There's another horse called Sibayan who runs in the Pre-Royal Oak at the weekend. He might turn into a cup horse, but Trawlerman sets the standard. Aiden's horse didn't stay, and there's consistently now suggested that I don't think he stay true really suits the stamina test. But Trawlerman would have beaten him anyway, so 5-6 was bordering on printing money.
If you want the last Galileo, he is still entered in the horses and training sale. I'd like to see him come back next year, but they are fully loaded and fully stocked up for the staying division as well as middle distance horses for next season, Georgia. Maybe Stay True dropping back down to 12 furlongs would be interesting for him, but he didn't run his race for whatever reason. Trawlerman, on the other hand, just better than this lot and proved it.
Yeah, a 7-year-old, it's hard to believe. I think that was only his second Group 1 actually, but I suppose that's a testament to Kyprios. And it's good to see that now that Sweet William is staying in training next year, as that didn't always seem the plan. Obviously Stay True. I thought in the ledger, to be honest with you, he was the last off the bridle, and in the last furlong you couldn't say he was getting closer, and I thought another 2 furlongs he would have been further away from them. Beating more than 30 lengths here, it'll be interesting to see. Coolmore do seem to have a lot in the sales at the moment, and I see they've got a big sale in Australia, so that will be interesting. And yeah, like Adam said, there isn't much to say. We've been used to, for the last 4 or 5 years, seeing Stradivarius, who, by the way, his yearlings were quite well received last week.
Ooh.
Kyprios, Trushan, Coltrane, Trawlerman. Whereas next year, I think this has been a real transitioning stage. And next year, you've got the likes of Scandinavia. Rahib, I really do think that horse is going to be a big player. George Scott's Camelo Damar. Further, who's running in the Melbourne Cup, he's now got new Australian syndicate owners that are joining in, and they have already said that the plan will be to go to Ascot afterwards. Paddy Toomey's Calmers, Lazy Griff, Tennessee Stud, the real big Frankel that ran of Francis Graffard's Calandagan. He was obviously well beaten at Ascot, but something must have gone wrong. He looked really impressive in France, and he went out for a holiday and he's back in training. And New Zealand, obviously only a 2-year-old, but he looked like a massive horse. And with his stride length data and everything, you'd think he'd end up being in these types of races. So, yeah, everybody's complaining about the lack of runners here, but you'd have to say next year it's interesting. We've still got Trawlerman and Sweet William to put all of these up against them and see how they're going to fare. And they sort of cross over the generations. And yeah, hopefully next year we'll have a more interesting division.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. It's very well made, Georgia, and very detailed as well. And it's also just worth pointing out, Charlie, that there's Al Rifa as well, who was devastatingly impressive in the Irish St. Ledger. And it just seems like what a loss Wooden Bassett is. At least there's 3 generations of his progeny still to come, but he's able to travel so powerfully that once he goes up in trip, he's taking on horses who are slower. They just can't keep up with him, and then he has the stamina to be able to kick on. If he could stay 2 mile 4 next season, he's a major player in the Gold Cup if they bring him back. They've got obviously Melbourne Cup aspirations, but they're already talking about Hong Kong after Melbourne, and that he does stay in training next season. There's a lot of strong stayers to look forward to. It's just this particular race this year, Illinois kind of derailed. Jan Bruegel's going to head to France. Scandinavia failed the vet, and so he's probably done for the season, comes back next year. There was quite a few horses who could have been in it, but time of the season and race proximity to other races just meant this was Trawlerman's to lose, and well, he's taken it.
Yeah, it was a pretty easy opportunity for Trawlerman to just sign off his season in good style. It's been nice to see him this year because he was kind of in the shadow of Kyprios for a couple of seasons. It's been nice to see him have his time in the sun. And in what's been a relatively weak division, he has been the standout. And it's always nice to see one that carries the form through the season consistently. So you're not just getting random different, like similar to in the sprint division, you're getting different winners every Group 1. At least with Trawlerman around, they've been consistent races, consistent results, and it'll be very interesting next year with him staying around. He sets a good standard to see how them 3-year-olds next season, obviously there'll be 4, but it'll be interesting to see how they stack up to his sort of standard that he's going to set.
Out of interest, do you think that the Justify Scandinavia is going to be able to bridge the gap next season? He's already a Group 1 winner in Open Company, but he was getting the 3-year-old allowance.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Scandinavia. I think if he makes the progression that he should do, then he will be the horse to beat next season in all the staying races.
I'm excited to see what he can do as well. It's a fascinating division next season. We'll see how it pans out. Let us know in the comment section, if you're watching this on YouTube, who you like for the stayers, and is Trawlerman just going to dance another dance next year and crush all of his enemies yet again? Real simple race for the team to dissect. We're going easy. Real simple race. The next Group 1 on the card was won by Lazzat. 5-1 in the morning. Somehow he drifts out. Then suddenly pummeled in the betting. Smashed off the boards. And then, sorry, what? What? Who did? Sorry. Blogger had a big bet on him, so that was him screwed. Is that the total performance data view on this? That it was the blogger strikes again, and that's why a 200-1 shot comes and wins? What the hell was even that?
I know you're trying to trap me into saying that Racing Blogger has some sort of data pattern around the horses he backs, but we're not going to leave that on his door. Lazzat has run his race entirely. He's run to form, and he's been beaten by the better horse. You know, this is not a fluke. It's 200-1 because the form book said, where did this come from? But this horse is the fastest horse in each of the last 4 furlongs. It's the only horse to run a sub-11 second furlong, 10.98 for the third. He's got the best run-out speed. He's made up a lot of ground on Lazzat, who's a very solid horse when he runs his race. And he's, one of the few horses to really come from too far back. I mean, you look how well the pace held up. Quinn Alter's finished third. And Powerful Glory's had to switch as well to get the right run under Jamie Spencer. What a brilliant ride. the question is not how did this 200 to 1 shot win a Group 1. The question is, can this 200 to 1 shot win another Group 1? Can he repeat this, or is this just his day? Because if he can repeat this, he's a serious player at this level. The one thing I will leap to Lazzat's defence is I don't think Lazzat was helped by being towards the far side, because he had Art Power alongside him, and Art Power didn't like the ground and cried enough with 2 furlongs to go, and that left James Doyle with no choice but to go. If there'd been something alongside Lazzat to take him a little bit further, maybe, but he was beaten by the best horse on the day. I'm actually quite glad in hindsight that we've had this winner, because if we do, as much as we like Flora Bermuda, Big Mojo, Inner Shearing, Quinault, they're nice horses, but they've all had loads of goes at this level. And if it had just been another horse from that pack of sprinters winning, we'd just say, oh, it's a bingo. Whereas at least this one is a new form line. And, it's kind of interesting to think, like, what price would you make him next time? How do you price him up next time he runs in a Group 1 sprint? In my head, I think he's probably still going to be a 10 to 1 shot, because people look at that price and think it was a fluke. But the data suggests it wasn't.
I think when he won the Mill Reef, so you could say very lightly raced horse, unbeaten in 2 starts as a juvenile, very impressive on debut, wins the Mill Reef Stakes, and then he has 2 starts this season. He doesn't beat a single horse home on debut and only beats 1 horse home on his second start. The comment from Richard Fahey after the race was he desperately needed to get a run into him, and they find the race. 2 horses from the Mill Reef won. One was La Balata, who unfortunately passed away when in the Middle East, but he won a listed race at Doncaster. And Sarab Star, who was beaten 9 1/4 lengths, came out and won a novice. The rest of them all beaten. If you found this horse, and there were people who did, there was somebody who tipped him on X. I think my final line for the champion sprint, Georgia, on Thursday's preview show was, I wouldn't be surprised if Spy Chief won this. I wouldn't be surprised if anything won this. And if you had been with me, you would have just seen me burst into an uncontrollable hysterical laughter on Saturday, because that's all my reaction could be. It's like, oh, of course a 200 to 1 shot has won this race. What a stupid division. Can you explain it as well as Adam has, or do you completely disagree with Adam and just think this was total nonsense?
Oh no, when you look into it, like, you can see what Adam's saying. And I mean, when Richard Fahey won this race in 2018 with Sands and Marley, that was a 28 to 1 shot. And you think that was, and he also trained Platinum Queen to win the Prix de l'Abbé, who's also by Quarter Glory, who's also out of Kodiak Mare. So he clearly, Platinum Queen was actually Kodiak's first Group 1 winner as a broodmare sire, and she didn't train on. And it's exactly the same cross as Powerful Glory. And I mean, when you're having a quick look, he was very easy to dismiss, because you just thought, well, he's probably not trained on. And you thought he's won a heavy ground Mill Reef where there was 4 or 5 non-runners, and he stopped like he'd been shot when he ran in the Sandy Lane, was it? Which obviously he couldn't breathe. He's had the wind up. Okay, you could say when he ran, where was it, at Beverley? It was over 5 furlongs, but still watching him and Cotto de Casa out the back, you just thought, oh, they're both not trained on. But I went back and watched it again today. He finished last, but beaten 3.5 lengths. He was never going until the last half of furlong, when he actually then started to run on. But I mean, if you're going to back a horse for a Group 1 after that, then fair play to you. I thought Jamie Spencer gave him a great ride. He was quite noticeable the way he travelled and everything, and that's why I don't think it was a fluke. He is still unexposed. It was only his 5th lifetime start. People do say after a second run after a wind up is when to get them, but this has taken that to a whole new level. And yeah, I just hope that he backs it up. And that also made me look into Richard Fahey. 2015, he trained 235 winners. This year, that was his 69th winner.
Yeah.
It's just was maybe running at an 8% strike rate. Maybe his horses are about to turn against form, and his horses might be something to look at going forward now.
There have been a few horses, Georgia, just before we go to Charlie, that Kevin Ryan, I think, is a good example of horses. They're just not hitting the line for whatever reason. Maybe Rafe Beckett just doesn't have the stock this season, but I think it's the same for him as well. They just haven't really hit the line hard. I don't know whether that's rapeseed close to yards or various different other environmental issues that are having effects on them, but this has not been the season that Richard Fahey would have wanted it to be. This puts a very nice cherry on it towards the end, and if they bring him back next season, it'll be interesting to see what he can do. And he, to be fair, the turn of foot he showed 2 furlongs out was just wow. But there have been just some stables that didn't really fire for one reason or another this season.
Yeah, no, I didn't realise how much of a quiet season it was, or the extent to how much it was. But he was, in 2015, that was probably when Paul Hannigan was champion jockey. And now I think Carl Burke's taken out a lot of the light of the Northern trainers, and he has been a bit quieter. But it's obviously a cross that takes to his training, and I really hope. I'd be very disappointed if he got retired now. He was the only colt to win on the day as well, and he beat 2 geldings. And how could you ever guess Quinault? I love Quinault and Stuart Williams, but last time he was beaten 16 lengths and never looked like he was, travelling with the zest that he normally does. He was practically pulled up over course and distance. How can you then say off of that he's going to go and run a career best and finish, 3rd behind Lazzat? So it is bizarre, but I really hope he comes back next year and shows us it wasn't a fluke.
Friend of the show, Stuart Williams with Quinault. Somebody, forgive me, I'm sorry, I've got a head like a sieve, so I forget. But somebody in the YouTube comment section was all over Quinault. So well done to you.
Yeah, fair play.
Well done to you. You got a really... Doesn't this just kind of prove it though, Charlie? You've got a 200-1 winner. You've got a horse who looked all set to go and win the race, but then again, he just doesn't seem to be at the peak of his powers from Royal Ascot. And you've got a gelding who was thrashed the last day, finishing 3rd. That's the sprint division, Charlie.
It's a very wide open division this season, isn't it? I felt when Lazzat won the Jubilee at Royal Ascot, when he pulled clear with Satono Rev, that this division would be his for the rest of the year. He just hasn't quite been able to replicate that form from that day. He still ran some great races in defeat, but I just thought he might dominate the division earlier in the season. Has he he's obviously run his race, but probably not to the level of what he produced at Royal Ascot. The winner, very hard to find unless you're in the stable, I suppose, because Richard Fahey did say in an interview that some of the lads had made a few quid off of him, so maybe he was doing something good at home. But I think it was just one of those races where all the circumstances sort of aligned, and he is a 3-year-old, very unexposed, only had, I think, 4 previous runs and 1 run back from wind surgery. So if it was his wind that was stopping him, then Jamie Spencer was the perfect man to put on top, because the way he rides that straight course at Ascot gets them to relax and really go through the gears gradually and finish the races off well. For a horse that may have been struggling for air previously, Jamie's ridden an absolute, just a beautiful masterpiece, really.
Is that the key to his riding on the straight track, Charlie? His ability to get a horse to relax, but also his ability to judge the pace and time when to challenge exactly?
I just think on the straight course at Ascot, the last furlong is a very long furlong, and people can get drawn into getting racing very early there, and it can be quite a stiff.
Nope.
It can be quite a stiff.
Stiff finish.
Last furlong, if you're.
Charlie, have you been taken out by Jamie Spencer's agent? Does he not want you giving away the secrets to Jamie Spencer's success in the straight course?
Good time to cut out. No, I was just saying it can be a very, very long last furlong there, and Jamie rides that track very patiently, and he's obviously a very good judge of pace, and he was just the perfect man for that horse on that day.
It was a brilliant ride. He was brilliant as a Native Warrior early in the season as well. The man's just ridiculous on the straight course. It's obscene how good he is. I don't know. I would never know this. I have no idea. But maybe Richard Fahey's stable staff placed their bets with 1xBet, in which case, well done to you. And if you're betting with 1xBet and you just happen to lose, just say it hasn't quite gone your way. Don't worry. There's a loss refund bet. Free bet back on some losing ragers. Obviously, terms and conditions apply, but it's always nice when you get a little bit of a bonus back. You've just lost. You were pretty confident this horse was going to win. Circumstances didn't go your way. Maybe you're doing a Peter Michael and complaining about a jockey afterwards. It's like, oh, actually, loss refund. Don't worry about it. Loss refund with 1xBet. Free bet back on certain losing wagers. You can find out more about it at 1xBet.ie. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply. Final Furlong podcast powered by 1xBet, sponsoring 3 races at the Curragh on Tuesday afternoon, including the Final Furlong podcast with 1xBet handicap. Best of luck to everybody competing. We're looking forward to it. Bet with your head. 1xBet knows the crack. Bet with your head, not above it. 1xBet.ie, find out more. A race that we can make a bit of sense of. Kalpana. Devastatingly impressive when she won the Fillies Mares race a year ago, and she's back in the winner's enclosure again. She's wearing the headgear. The arc didn't go to plan, Adam Mills. She was trapped far too wide that day, and the piece of cheek piece came off her as well. Maybe that affected her, but she just was too wide that day. The all-weather race was the one that really confused me. I couldn't quite get my head around that, and I just didn't like the fact that they had gone for the headgear, and so I didn't trust her and wanted to take her on. But you knew that morning, similar to the massive gamble on Lazzat, you knew she was going to run a massive race given the huge market move for her, and she was much the best.
Yeah, she was much the best. She also probably got the best ride of the day in the, when we look at the times, the ground was bordering on good to firm on Saturday. 4 of the 5 Group 1s broke the champion's previous record for Champions Day since it switched to Ascot. This race didn't. And I think that it was relatively steadily run. She was well placed, and then she kicked home and proved too good for them. But you say that about the all-weather race, but actually Giovanotto ran like a really good race in the Arc. So maybe it wasn't the worst defeat in the world. She's got earlier form with Calandagan, proved too good for these. Estrange will be interesting for next year because I thought she was sort of a bit unlucky and had to fight for racing room. Stays on past QEII, who sets a fair standard at that level. I think this is a relatively good piece of form. But I also think we have to have the caveat that Kalpana had the absolute pole position, sitting on the front and getting the first run, and then steadily run races at Ascot. That's the place to be.
Yeah, it was a brilliant ride from Colin Keane. I thought it was a really good performance from Estrange as well. I would completely agree with that. I got this hilariously wrong, Georgia. Joking earlier on about I'm never wrong, except for that one time I was mistaken. I was hilariously wrong about this race. Couldn't wait to take on Estrange and really wanted to take on Kalpana, and did so with Bedtime Story, cracking each way bet. She finishes 4th. Brilliant. Absolutely. Do I get a loss refund bet? Is there a loss refund bet in that? Great. What a disaster that was for me. But Kalpana was great, and Estrange, if they both come back next season, assuming their connections are brave enough to do that, and maybe they just want to send them off as broodmares, but plenty more races to be won with them. And Kalpana's form in particular, we'll never see Whirl again, unfortunately, but hopefully her progeny live up to standard. She's been retired after an injury. But she was the only horse to give Calandagan a proper race in the King George, and, well, that worked out all right.
Yeah, no, she was. The only question coming into this was how much of a hard race did she have in the Arc and what would be the effects of it here. But Boldin did say beforehand he would have been very disappointed if she didn't win. And like Adam said beforehand, there was no pace on paper, and that materialised as they didn't go overly quick. Quite a few of them were keen in behind, and ultimately the winner was well placed. She looks super straightforward, and it will be interesting to see if she stays in training last year. Obviously, last year they retired Blue Stocking, but I think because they had Kalpana coming through, so hopefully they do keep her in training. I do think Estrange will have her day. Danny Tudhope did pick up a 6-day ban for careless riding for trying to push his way out. But you'd have to say if she got a good draw in the Arc, she would have run a hell of a race with the ground that she'd prefer. And I do think she'll get a Group 1 to her name in the right conditions and having the right setup. And the only other one that I'd give a small mention to, as the race didn't suit closers, would have to be Danielle. She came from last to finish 5th, so I thought she ran well. But yeah, the first 2 you'd have to say I do think they are proper Group 1 horses.
Big performance from Kalpana, Charlie, and if they keep her going, she'll be a big player next season again.
Yeah, sorry, I've dropped out again there, but yeah, I thought she was given a very straightforward ride, probably best horse in the race, and Colin kept it very simple, very sort of straightforward, job done, put a line through the Arc. She didn't get a very good trip. She's been consistent all year, and she deserved to get her Group 1 again, same as last year. She won this race last year, so she obviously likes it there, and I felt that Estrange, I've always liked Estrange since she won on debut, but she probably really needs more juice in the ground to be seen to her best.
Yeah,
still ran very well.
Absolutely. I think she just does need proper soft ground to really be seen to best effect. It would be great to see David Amar bring her back next year, and Cheveley Park may very well be tempted to do so, although as a Night of Thunder, she's going to be a very popular broodmare as well. QEII ran a nice race, Adam. And to be fair, Bedtime Story ran better, but she's not in the same league as Kalpana and Strange.
No, I don't think so. I'm not. Maybe QEII isn't in the same league either, in terms of she's maybe just a Group 2 filly who's not quite at the same level. But, it's a nice race. I'm glad you got, you didn't get your each way pickup, but Bedtime Story ran a lot better than she has been. So that's something for them perhaps to build on. But, Kalpana is pretty consistent and she sets a really fair standard. So with the way the race has panned out, you'd certainly be confident about the front two. Therefore, those in behind, perhaps at a slightly lower level, there are things to build on as well.
Spare a thought from my cousin Patrick Murphy, who was there at Ascot, listened to the Final Furlong podcast beforehand, heard the team wax lyrical about Trawlerman, saw the fact that the horse nearly went even money and didn't back him. I told him one of the bets of the day was Mission Central, didn't back him, but did back Bedtime Story each way, and then sent me a WhatsApp going, "Oh, we got the place money on it." No, I'm sorry, Patrick. No, you didn't. But don't feel too bad. He was in the corporate seats. He was in the expensive prawn sandwich brigade seats. So well done to all the team at Ascot for looking after him. And he had a fantastic time. He's very much looking forward to going back again. Okay. Real simple race to break down. Real simple race for the team. This should be super quick, super easy. Barely an inconvenience. Queen Elizabeth II Stakes goes to Cicero's Gift. Adam Mills, explain the 100-1 victory of Cicero's Gift in the QE2, and are the milers as bad as the sprinters?
Oh, I don't know. When you get to that, you start to sort of get people say, "Oh, you get excited about the jump season at Cheltenham too soon." It's because by the time you get to this stage of the season, some bits of the flat make no sense whatsoever. And this is one race. Stall 1 beats Stall 2, so maybe you think, "Oh, it's the draw bias," but then you look at the date and think, "Well, not necessarily." What this is a very good ride by Jason Watson. And Cicero's Gift is the fastest horse in Furlong 6 and 7. He's kicked at the right time. He's got the right run. If the Lion in Winter, this time last year, we're thinking like the Lion in Winter's like his favourite for the Derby and he's going to be the superstar. And he's just not really been it, but he's run kind of okay. But you can't really say he's necessarily run to what we've thought he would be, although he's run a nice race. Alakazi's third. Docklands is fourth, so you've got to build the form around that. Docklands only ever runs well at Ascot, but he always runs well at Ascot. He's run a really good race. He's finished his race well. As for the rest, I think we can all finally accept that Rosalian's bubble is firmly burst.
Yeah.
And that's done. Field of Gold, I thought, had the chance, and he was very well backed. I don't think he was on the wrong part of the track. I would have made the case and said, "Oh, Field of Gold was in the wrong place. Never Say Brave was too far back." But actually, then you watch the Balmoral handicap at the end of the day where Tom Marquand decided, right, we're going to go down the middle. And everything went round the middle and ran its race. It's not like he was on the wrong part of the track. I think we said this off air and you said it, Emmet, maybe the 3-year-olds just aren't that good. And that might be a case here, but Never So Brave has been there and he didn't really run his race, so I don't know. Would you back Cicero's Gift to do it again? No. He's a nice horse, but I think you can probably say after 15 starts, if he was going to be a 125 performer, he'd have been it by now.
Yeah.
And this was a nice performance, a really good ride. Well done to Connections, fantastic for them, but I think in a year's time we'll look back at this and think it was just a muddling race.
Listen, hats off to Charlie Hills. He's been saying for a long, long time that this is a fantastic racehorse and that he thought he was a Group 1 performer. He's done it. Pretty certain in the past they felt like he needed soft ground and he didn't get that at the weekend. I can't explain it, Georgia. It doesn't make any sense to me. But I'm almost more interested to talk actually about Field of Gold to a second, because there was a narrative after his performance in the St. James's Palace Stakes that this is the best horse in the world. Oh my goodness, this is the best horse in the world. He should never have been beaten in the Guineas. And I think with the benefit of hindsight, there's two ways of looking at this. There can be two narratives. You can say he got injured in the Sussex Stakes. This is his first run back. It's an 80-day break. It's a horrible preparation. He's coming into this in the back of an injury layoff. Of course, he'd be trying to do what only George Washington and, was it Minding, did? Win this on the back of not finishing in the first 3 on the previous starts. He's also bidding to be only the second horse in the last 25 years to win the St. James's Palace Stakes and the Queen Elizabeth II Stakes in the same season. The only horse to do that is Frankel. So he had a lot to overcome. There's another way of looking at it, though. Wins the Solaro Stakes beating Maturi Bay. Maturi Bay is no good. Beaten in the Prix-Jean-Luc Lagardère. Beaten in the 2,000 Guineas. Beaten in the Sussex Stakes. Now beaten in the Queen Elizabeth II Stakes. And he never had to face the Line in Winter before. He'd never faced Johnny Murtagh's horse before. He'd never taken on Docklands, aside from Goodwood, and Docklands doesn't run well anywhere outside of Ascot. The Line in Winter beat Ruling Court. Ruling Court beats Field of Gold. The first time the Line in Winter faces Field of Gold, he beats him. Therefore, never as good as it looked. Or did he put up such a stunning performance in the St. James's Palace Stakes where he gets the 130 RPR, only the 5th British horse in the last 10 years to achieve that, and he has not been able to bounce back from that?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I remember thinking when he won at Ascot, this horse will not be beaten again all season. And now when you look back at that form, you think the pacemakers that day went hard. Ruling Court was in himself and he beat Henry Matisse. So it is very difficult. I really hope he stays in training and fills out again, strengthens up, and then we can try and judge it more next year off what he does next year. You know, we don't know the extent of, how lame he was after Goodwood, and that brings into a lot of factors. I mean, he wasn't really beaten that far. He just ran okay, didn't he? He just ran okay. But it is just the, Sistro's gifts. How do you even explain that? I mean, he won a listed race at Sandown last time. The second was then beaten 13 lengths in the Challenge Cup. And the third, Salau, was beaten 9 lengths in the listed race at Leopardstown on the weekend. But saying that, Bayside Boy won that listed race in 2022 and then went and won this. And when beating Modern Games and Group 1 winners like Mostadaf and King of Change also won that listed event. I mean, if you found him off of that, then fair play. But, it was a full field, 17 Group Grade 1 winners between them. He was the lowest rated going into it. Stall 1 beat Stall 2. It's so hard to explain. He had promise of being a good horse through his career, but this is a whole new level. To think 12 months ago he was 7th in the Balmoral is extremely hard to explain this result. And interestingly, he actually beat Docklands in a novice at Wolverhampton in 2023 by 1.5 lengths, which is roughly the same distance as he beat him here. Like, it doesn't make sense. It's very hard to, you're used to bizarre results on bottomless ground, but this is tough, and it will be interesting to hear the fallout that comes from this. Who's going to be retired? Who's going to, carry on? Never So Brave was slow away and keen and just never looked like he was going to go anywhere. The horse to take out of it, I thought, Johnny Murtagh's. This is Johnny's first year training over 50 winners in Ireland. I think he's actually 3rd behind Aidan and Joseph in number of winners in Ireland this year. And this was this horse, Alkazi's first try at Group 1 level. He's been brought along slowly. And I'd say that he could be a consistent performer in Group 1 company next year.
I think it's a good shout. Great to see Johnny Murtagh doing so well. Just going back to Field of Gold, because again, there was such excitement about him, Charlie. These are the horses that Field of Gold has beaten in his 2 Group 1 wins. Expanded, Winlord, Officer, Scorthy Champ, Comanche Brave, Rashabar, Hot as Hell, Cosmic Year. That was the Irish 2,000 Guineas. In the St. James's Palace Stakes, he beat First Wave, Winlord, Officer, Rashabar, a below-par Ruling Court who had been trained for the Derby and was then rerouted to this race with 10 days' notice, and the poor fellow was sweating up beforehand, and I think he was a very, very talented horse, and it's a real shame for Charlie that we'll never get to see that horse again. He was really talented, I think. And Henri Matisse, who's a horse I really like, but his subsequent performances have been finishing in front of Field of Gold in the Sussex Stakes, and then, to be fair, he's only beaten 2.25 lengths in his next start in France, but it's not like he went on and added another Group 1. At the time, that form looked great. With the benefit of hindsight, Charlie, maybe not.
Yeah, but we could all do with some hindsight in some of these situations. I think visually, it wasn't so much what he was beating, it was just the way he beat them in the Irish Guineas in the St James's Palace. he absolutely blew them away at Ascot, and very hard to think that he would not win again this season after that performance. But you do have to remember with Field of Gold, like he won the Craven. He was trained, I think he was very much trained for the Guineas this year. And for him to be ready for the Craven and then go to the Guineas, you know, he had a few hard races in the first half of the season, and very hard for him to maintain that level of form to October.
Yeah, and it's just another proof that, I mean, Ombudsman was trying to... I was wrong, by the way. I don't know what got into it. I think I was in such an enthusiastic state to try and bury Peter Michael with a statistic that I mixed up my words and ended up saying, oh, Ombudsman would have to be the first horse since Frankel to win the Prince of Wales. Frankel won the Queen Anne. I don't know what I was thinking. Apologies to everybody. No horse has won the Prince of Wales Stakes and the Champion Stakes in the same season for the last 25 years. So pretty difficult for Ombudsman to go and do that. And only Frankel did the St. James's Palace Stakes QE2 double. So it's not easy, and it's very, very difficult to have a horse peaked for Royal Ascot. And then Lazzat is a good example. Peaks at Royal Ascot, doesn't recover. It's tough. It's very, very tough for Field. I'd love to see him back next year. I really hope they bring him back next season because I'm sure Teddy Gosden doesn't remember this, but the enthusiasm and the excitement that he had, I met him very briefly in the parade ring at the Curragh after the Irish 2000 Guineas. Like the pride in that man's face after what that horse had done. He had just achieved what they were telling you he was capable of. I would love to see him come back next year and strut his stuff again. I don't know if he will do it. I don't know if he can.
We need to see him again next year.
Yeah.
if he's back. I thought it was very good of the team to keep Rosalien in training this year and go again. It's been hard to watch him get touched off so narrowly so many times, and I was hoping that this might be his day to just get his Group 1 this season. But again, just the clash between Field of Gold and Rosalien didn't materialise again. So it's unusual result. Very good for the Hills team to have another Group 1 horse, and a big day for Jason Watson.
Yeah, well said. I God, he was so emotional afterwards too, and why wouldn't he be? Well done to him. And Charlie Hills could barely talk afterwards. I watched ITV's coverage. Great. I think that's the best broadcast they've done all year. I really enjoyed it. But they did a fascinating little piece of insight with Sean Levy beforehand and Ruby Walsh. Sean Levy did not look confident in that. He really didn't look confident in it. And I don't think that was Sean Levy not having confidence in himself. I think that was Sean Levy just thinking, I don't think this horse is what he was. And to be fair to him, he's been on the go since the Lockinge. Like, real difficult to try and keep that level of form. If they brought him back as a 5-year-old, let's be on the Rosalien bandwagon all over again. Let's see if we can get him in the winner's enclosure again. But just tough for him. Tough for the horse. And I was of the opinion that 3-year-old form wasn't much good. It hasn't really held up. So look, I'm going to hold to that. I don't think beating Henry Longfellow and beating Notable Speech really means a whole lot in the context of these things. Maybe Notable Speech wins the Breeders' Cup Mile. We'll discuss that later on in the week, and of course next week as well on the Final Furlong podcast. Okay, very briefly, because Charlie's got a ride. He's going to win at Wolverhampton later on today. So very quickly, 2 horses to talk about. Mission Central. I got something right. Hey! Mission Central was really, really good under Christophe Soumillon. Very unusual that Aidan O'Brien would have a 2-year-old gelding, but he does with this fella, and I think he could make up into a proper Group race sprinter next season. Adam, I'm not telling you to back him for the King Stand, but I would really like to think that that's what he can do. But we're going to see him with the Breeders' Cup first.
Yeah, we are. Am I interested in the Breeders' Cup? Let me wait for the draw, I think, for the Breeders' Cup before I get too excited about him, because I think he's quite a big striding colt. Certainly had the longest average stride on Saturday. Got loads of early speed. Yeah. If we spend the whole year saying the sprint division is a complete lottery and you don't need to be that good, and probably 115 rated horses win Group 1 sprints, then surely this lad you've got to be looking at thinking, if he makes up into a half-decent sprinter next year, he's going to at least be competitive. That early speed always helps because it gets him out of trouble, out the gate, big long stride. And as we saw with Calandagan, if you've got a long stride and you're in front, it's a massive advantage because the other horses have got to work twice as hard to get past you. He could easily make up into a Group 1 sprinter. The Breeders' Cup would be interesting if he got the right draw. Where I'd be worried for him is if he's drawn, double figures or something like that. It's a little bit more difficult, particularly with the bend and things. But he's very good. And if he hadn't run at Doncaster, we'd be really talking him up, would we? I think it's just that one disappointment on his CV. But apart from that, he's very good. And look, who knows? This time next year, we might be thinking that he's sort of the best sprinter around. So we'll have to see.
Come on, Mission Central. He's got a very awkward head carriage, but I thought the stiff 6 furlongs at Ascot would suit him, and Sumion's brilliance would suit him as well. Also, 5 furlongs at Doncaster just didn't work. They thought he had the pace for it, but he doesn't. I was a little bit annoyed at Christoph initially because he didn't go to the lead. Don't worry, Christoph knows what he's doing. And in America, round a bend, that might help him as well. I'm very excited to see what he can do in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Sprint. This has already been kind of alluded to by Georgia Cox already, but there were 7 races on Champions Day. 5 of them were won by geldings, 1 by a filly and 1 by a colt. So what a stallion prospect Powerful Glory is in hindsight. The last gelding to win was Crown of Oaks. He was sent off odds on for a handicap the last time we saw him over 10 furlongs in Ireland, Georgia. Dropped back to a mile. Good ride from Tom Marquand. William Haggis back in the winner's enclosure. Really smart performance for Tony Bloom.
Yeah, that is funny because the conditions race was actually a 1-2-3 for geldings, but with the 2 funny results, you have to think the conditions race and the handicapped, the right ones were in the finish, and the form on both of those races seemed strong. The strange thing about the handicap was the fact that I think the second and third were drawn like 1 and 2, and it's a strange for the straight course at Ascot, and you can make the running, not get hassled, and everyone moves over to you. I thought it was a weird comment that James Doyle said after the sprint, saying, "Oh, if only they'd stayed in one group, Lazzat would have won," or whatever. And you think, when do they ever stay in one group on the straight course at Ascot, especially in full fields? So the fact they all moved over to Tom after a furlong or so, I just thought was a strange move, especially when, Sistra's Gift, they were drawn 1-2 and stayed on the far side, and obviously hugely outran their odds.
Just as a jockey, Georgia, there's a brilliant book I read. There's 2 brilliant books I read by David Lee Priest, Against the Odds and The Betting Edge. And it's all about the psychology of betting. But in that, he talks about psychology and the madness of crowds and groupthink. And how difficult as a jockey is it to not do what everybody else is doing? Because that was the first thing I thought of when they all gravitate over towards Tom. Like, can't you just go to where Cicero's Gift was? Can't you stay? But everybody followed him. They all followed the leader.
Well, you think having 100 to 1 shot win from the far side, people would stay. But I think a lot of the time people just follow the pace. And I actually thought the 1, 2, 3, 4, they all had really good form. And he looks like a really nice horse that would definitely be a pattern horse next year. Yeah. Typical Haggis slow burner. He does make me laugh. I love him. But he does make me laugh when he was complaining that the handicapper put him up £15 and yet he's still winning and still doing it easy, and he's probably going to be a pattern horse next year. But
Georgia, he was complaining about the draw before. No, we've got no chance. Oh, the draw. He's always complaining.
Yeah, well, yeah. So, he won the race in 2021 with Valdari, who is a soft ground specialist. And I think this horse he ended up winning the listed race. And I think this horse is much better than him. It was a funny day for the connections with Lake Forest being so disappointing in Australia that morning. So it was a long day for them, but at least it ended well. And I thought, Holloway, boy, again, like you'd have to think he covered a lot of ground moving all the way from stall 2 to the stand side. And he was out on the wing. He'd had 196 days away from the track, returning to handicap company off top weight. He ran huge. Same with the third, very consistent horse, and Shout again up £9, but really another solid race. And I think he'll have a big day in him again next year in the handicaps.
Yet another Carl Burke horse excelling themselves off top weight in a handicap after Ice Max a couple of weeks ago, and Andy Newton's big nap. And there's been loads. It's been a tremendous season for him. Any other business for you, Charlie?
Just in that last race, I thought that they're very shrewd connections. Tony Bloom, they know how to win these handicaps, and this horse, being the 3-year-old, should progress hopefully into next year. Like Georgia said, he should be pattern class. So he seems to have beat the right ones. The first 4 or 5 have been running pretty consistent through the year. And it was nice that a 3-year-old with a bit of potential has come out on top.
Well said. I'm very conscious of the fact that you have to get yourself ready for a ride.
I've still got a bit of time.
Oh, excellent stuff. Okay,
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
in that case, very briefly, on the best sprinter in the world, who I didn't back him. I don't know why I didn't back him. Even money. The Australians booed him, as they tend to do for any horse that's not Australian. But they weren't booing him after the race, Adam Mills. A stunning performance from QEII Rising. Eased down in the world's richest sprint. I mean, if they brought him over, to bring him over. Yeah. Just do it. Bring him over. He'll win. He'll batter our sprinters he'll do it backwards.
They could have flew him straight over to win the Champions Sprint.
They really could have.
If he could have got there in time.
And he'd have given them a head start and a thrashing.
Yeah, I think there might be a slight prize money issue with persuading QEII Rising to come over here. You know, it's a slight. The average is worth whatever it is, £7 million, and Champion Sprint is not. But he is just, he's toying with them. When you watch it, you think surely a horse can't win a Group 1 sprint doing this, and you feel like if he'd wanted to really throw him, he could have done it. And he might have won by even further. It's good because it kind of settles the debate of like he's not in that golden 60 category anymore. He only does it in Hong Kong, and he just beat the same horses. He's gone through all the quarantine. He's gone through the travel, and he's just battered them, really, isn't it? And it's sort of like it's that typical Australian thing of like they're going to boo him, and then when you see that, you think, okay, this is like the presence of greatness, isn't it? And that's pretty exceptional. Whether he travels again, I'm not sure. I'd imagine they'll just go back to Australia, won't they? That seems the more sensible plan. In theory, they can go to Dubai, I suppose. But, is there really anything to be gained by winning the Alquoz Sprint when you can just run around Charlton and pick up more Group 1s? He's different leagues to every other sprinter. And, imagine if he turned up in the Kingstown, what would he be, 1 to 20? You'd probably look at 1 to 20 and think that's still quite value. It's that he is that far ahead of our sprinters, and he's now proven that he's that far ahead of the Australian sprinters. But there's nothing left. There's nothing to challenge him. It's just a question of how long he keeps going for. But this is one of those things. Whether you backed it or not, you can just watch the race and think, like, how can a horse do that in a Group 1? It's insane. How can they look that easy? It's arrogant of me to say it at 15 stone or whatever I am, but he might win me on his back. It's that, like, he's just so good. He's so classy. He moves for him. Look at Charlie laughing. He's like, yeah, you ain't going to lose the weight, son. But there is that view of, like, he's just so good. He's just so good. And, let's hope he does travel. Wouldn't it be amazing to think that they look at Dubai and go, yeah, we'll go for the Alquoz Sprint in March. It'd be fantastic now if we could see him against the European horses. Purely because it would show literally how terrible our sprint division is compared to QEII Rising. And it would be that one of those things, Emmet, that we'd be doing the podcast and you'd be going, right, one expert have got even money that he wins by 18 lengths. Peter Michael would go, yeah, we'll have a bit of that. It's that kind of thing. In we go. It's just, this thing is so, so special. And it was such a good performance.
He's been 20-1 on for his last 3 starts, including in a Group 1, and they sent him off even money. I mean, again, I didn't back him. And I didn't even put him in one of my elaborate multiples. What the hell was I thinking? I must have had a concussion that morning. I don't know. What a horse. What a joy to watch. What a stunning animal. Shout out Sheikh Mohammed. I know Sheikh Mohammed's a massive fan of the Final Furlong podcast. I know he never misses an episode. Every time he's out there on the Arabian thoroughbreds doing the long distance marathons, he's always binge listening to episodes of the Final Furlong. Any chance he'll bring over Tempted. At least we get the QEII Rising form. She's an Australian filly. She's been third in a Group 1. She's won a Group 2. Bring her over. She'll crush this lot, Georgia.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with everything Adam said in the fact that I don't think they would bring QEII Rising over here because of prize money. But Lazzat, the connections of Lazzat did say that they were going to go to Saudi and Dubai. So if he did go to Dubai, then we could get a form line from Lazzat because it does seem like he's going to go international travels again. And that would be interesting.
Hayes. Do it.
Yeah. But I think that's the closest we're going to get. Like Adam said, I can't see them being tempted. It is a shame that the crowd booed him, but I love the way that Zach rides him because there must have so much pressure on him with all the chat and everything beforehand in the run-up and the week and the rumours and blah, blah, blah. And yet he doesn't panic at all. He just nudges him out to the line. So it's great, isn't it?
It's so funny, Charlie. I don't know if you saw the barrier trial that he ran in, and then the commentary from the Australians. And I don't want to misquote this, but the impression I got from it was the Australians were like, this is your superstar? This is the horse you think is so great? He can't even win a barrier trial. It's a barrier trial. It's his first gallop in Australia. He's going to blow you to pieces. And like, this is just a simple old work. They couldn't wait to take him on.
No, they were very keen to be against him, but I suppose on home soil, the Aussies are very passionate about having the best sprinters in the world. So, with him coming over, they were very keen to take him on in any way they could, really. And any angle they could find to think that he might be vulnerable, they could have a crack at him. They were just grabbing onto anything that they could. But he put them firmly in their place.
He absolutely smashed them. It's a little bit like the Jason Weaver story that he told on the Final Furlong podcast years and years and years ago about how he was so excited going over to Australia and they were so welcoming to him, himself and Double Trigger, and they were all about him. Oh, the best stayer in Europe, the best stayer in Britain. We're so honoured to have you here. And when he gets lapped in the Melbourne Cup, they were all booing him and someone yells at him, insert colourful language, off back to Britain and take that dog with you. It's like there's no love lost from the Aussies, especially when you disappoint them. But fair play, they cheered him on after he won. Not very sportsmanlike beforehand, but that's the Aussies for you. And we love you,
have
Australia.
to cheer a like that.
We have listeners in Australia, so we're very happy with that. And shout out to the Aussie posse. Okay, the 1xBet performance of the week. I think I would be amazed if we're not all agreed on this, but the 1xBet performance of the week for Georgia Cox was...
Obviously, you've got to say Calandagan, but there were quite a few other performances throughout the weekend. If we're, looking for... I thought Carl Burke's yesterday Convergent was very good, beating Dubai Honour, etc. But obviously Calandagan is the highlight, and I'm sure Carl Burke's will go on to do better next year, though.
Yeah, shout out to the Carl Burke team and to the owners. I've met the owners of him. There was a German Group 1 that was in consideration. No, this was the race they were going for all along, and he was brilliant yesterday. And I know you really like Yellow Jersey, Adam. He ran a massive race as well. Maybe hit the front a little bit too soon, but he's a horse that will be exciting for next season. But Convergence, a proper talent. Your 1xBet performance of the week, Adam?
Yeah. Well, it's Calandagan. I mean, there's nothing else to talk about. It's just Calandagan. That was magnificent. But you're quite right. That race yesterday is going to work out really well. Convergent will hopefully be back next year. He'll be running in the same race as Calandagan. Whether he's good enough to beat him, we'll find out. Yellow Jersey's interesting in that they left the big sales race on Arc Weekend to run in this instead. I thought he made a big step up in class and took it in his stride. Oisin Murphy probably, I'm not sure he went too soon. I think having Dubai Honour on his tail all the way down the hill probably got an inexperienced horse racing a little bit too soon. The horse to take out of it for now is Dubai Honour. That was a massive run, his first start since running at Chartin. I'd assume he's going back to Chartin for the International Race Day. Got beaten that last year by Giavalotta. I mean, that looks an obvious prep, and that was a really nice prep for it. Yellow Jersey might go to Bahrain, possibly. Andre Fabre likes that Bahrain International Trophy in November, so there's an option there, I suppose. But I think both Yellow Jersey and in particular Convergent will be competing in Group 1s next season. Yeah. And Convergent, other than getting chinned in the German Derby, has really not done anything wrong.
And he should have won that German Derby. He really should have. Not having a pop at Clifford Leeds very easy. We all make mistakes, but my goodness, he really should have won that race. I would love to see him back for the Irish Champion Stakes at a track he was so good at this year in Group 1 company. Hopefully he can bridge that gap, and I think he will, and I'm sure his owners would very much like to be winning a Group 1 in Ireland as well. Charlie, your 1xBet performance of the week?
Well, just it has to be Calandagan, doesn't it? It's a standout. So, and the fact that he's going to be coming back again next season is very exciting.
We're all agreed. It's Calandagan. Absolutely. Superstar. Looking forward to seeing him in action next season. Looking forward to seeing you with us as we preview the Breeders' Cup in upcoming podcasts. And of course, more importantly, we're going to be previewing the best bets for the weekend on Thursday with the returning conquering heroes, Peter Michael, Andy Newton. Is George on that show? She might be. I know George Gorman is desperate to get back on the show and is very annoyed that he missed out last week. And there was quite a few people saying, hey, where's George? Georgia did brilliant. And she did fantastic analysis, as she always does. So maybe Georgia will be with us as well. Charlie, thank you very much for joining us on the show. I hope you've enjoyed your first podcast experience. You did really well.
Thanks for having me on.
And thank you. We'll have you on again soon if you're up for it. I don't know if you realized it was going to be this long, but you know enough of the people who are on this show.
Enough of them to know how long.
Yeah, you were warned beforehand. You knew. And of course, you knew as well, watching and listening. Thank you so much for watching and listening to the Final Furlong podcast. We really appreciate it. If you haven't smashed the like button already, I didn't harass you for it. I didn't really hound you for it. Hit that like button now. It's much appreciated. Really helps with the algorithm. More importantly, smash the subscribe button so you never miss an episode of the Final Furlong podcast. Big interviews coming your way, special features, and lots of previews as well. If you haven't already, signed up to onexbet.ie now. They're sponsoring 3 races at the Curragh on Tuesday. Maybe you're listening to this on Tuesday, so hopefully there'll be some good winners there. And including the Final Furlong podcast, 1xBet handicap, so check that out. And we're back with more content very, very soon. 1xBet.ie. You can sign up now, bet 10, get €30 in free bets. From Georgia Cox, Adam Mills, Charlie Bennett, and me, Emmet Kennedy, we will talk to you again very, very soon on the Final Furlong podcast. Look after yourself and each other. God bless.
Thanks for spending some time with us on the Final Furlong podcast. We're independent media, so if you like what we do, hit like, share, and subscribe. It's free, it's quick, and it genuinely helps. And if you enjoyed this episode, there's plenty more where that came from. Don't miss out. Subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all major platforms, and join us on the gravy train. The Final Furlong podcast, independent, unfiltered, and powered by you.